controlled and the busiest retirement in history. He's continued with his books, his theatre trips, his programmes, TV, Marigold, Unforgettable, Pundit, etc. I can't remember how old he is now, but he's over 55 and he just doesn't stop working. And with Marigold, I'm a little bit disappointed, I'm not sure how many of you saw it, that he's not wearing that wonderful headgear that he had made for him, especially in Marigold. I thought he'd be wearing it tonight. But I hope his foot massage is still working. Anyway, I have been asked by someone who can't be here if during the evening he will give us the entire Sri Lankan team, first and second names. It was a challenge to him. But anyway, I'm sure we're going to get lots of reports on cranes, pigeons and aeroplanes, but that's all I need to say. Blowers, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming.
Not at all, my dear old thing. Absolutely not. You were talking about Devon Lock, weren't you?
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was trying to remember the name of the horse. Right.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Right, so we've got two questions now on the same subject. So can we let them both ask their question before you come in, Henry? First of all, Steve Weare and then Stewart Lewis. Steve, you're on mic.
Yeah, good evening, Blowers. And
hello.
Many thanks for giving up your time for us. My question is, if you could choose any four of the many co-commentators and guests with whom you've shared the microphone over the years to spend a day in the commentary box with, who would they be? And as a supplement to that, which two teams would you choose to be commentating on? For instance, the Great West Indies team of the 80s, and which ground would you choose to be at?
Stuart, would you like to ask your question now, because it is on the same subject?
Hello, Henry.
My dear old thing.
Thanks for doing this, and it's great to be talking to a fellow Norfolk man.
Well, my dear old thing, I'm in Norfolk. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Hertfordshire. I always wish I was in Norfolk, though I haven't lived there for 40 years. My question was specifically about the overseas commentators and summarisers you work with on TMS. Most of them come over as genial, but I wonder which of them was most memorable or were most memorable to work with, and maybe one or two anecdotes you might have.
Well, yes, now, you interesting questions. First of all, I never like talking about other commentators, because I think commentators shouldn't talk about the people they do business with. However, I will take a deep breath. I'll go first of all, the first question. If there were four commentators in the box to spend the day with commentating, and I'm going to ask you both one question before I answer. Are you confusing commentators with summarizers? Do you want me only to pick ball-by-ball commentators, or are you involving summarizers too? Because there is an enormous distinction.
I wanted to include both.
Does that go for both of you?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, you can spend the day with any four people you like.
Yeah, I dare say, but you do say commentators, and strictly speaking, I'm a commentator, and Jeffrey Boycott's a summarizer, and Michael Vaughan's a summarizer. I mean, that is the sort of difference there. Now, commentators, the great commentator of all, as far as I'm concerned, was John Arlott. I'm allowed four. I should be the fifth. I'm not commentating. I'm merely sitting on the producer's stool. I'd have to have Brian Johnston too, because it would be great fun. It would be huge fun. My overseas commentator, who I would have first, second, and third, as far as overseas commentators go, is Tony Cozier, who was a genius. He was the only man I know who could walk from the discipline of television commentary within a minute and a half, take up radio commentary to totally different disciplines. He did it brilliantly. Now, who would be my favorite summarizer? I tell you exactly who my favorite summarizer is, and this may surprise you, it may not, I don't know. The best summarizer I ever worked with was Vic Marks. And I think he was absolutely brilliant. Why was he brilliant? None of the experts, when I say experts, I mean people who played 100 test matches or more, when none of them were as good at actually identifying a moment when a game goes through a sea change. Victor was absolutely brilliant at this. When a game changed course, imperceptibly probably, and Victor would get there before anyone else. He had a wonderful sense of humor, a great chuckle to his voice, and he knew his cricket enormously well too. And I personally think he was light with it. He wasn't heavy-handed. He didn't grip you around the throat. And so I think those would be the four I would have: Arlott, Johnston, Vic Marks, and Tony Cozier. And I think that would keep us all highly entertained for a very long time. Now, the other question, the four overseas commentators, obviously Tony Cozier would be there straight away. I always enjoyed, and this will cause a sight, you'll all say I'm an old-fashioned, old whatnot, an old fart, but there we are. Charlie Fortune was great fun, the South African. Well, he was an Englishman, actually. He was born in Yeovil, I think, Charlie Fortune. But we think of him in terms of commentary as an overseas commentator. I think the Australian that I enjoyed very, very much was Neville Oliver. I think Jim Maxwell does it extremely well too. I'll have one of those two, and I really don't mind which. I think Jim has just got better and better and better, so let's settle for him. Let's have Jim, Tony Cozier, Charlie Fortune, and they'd keep Charlie Fortune on the straight and narrow, because he tended to go off much worse than I did, talking about other things. And who now would be the third one? I wonder, I tell you exactly the third one. The fourth one would be Ian Galloway from New Zealand, who was the best cricket commentator New Zealand ever produced. Still alive, but sadly, not really away with the fairies, I'm afraid. He's a great age, but he was wonderful. He spoke very quickly, very clearly, and with a tremendous sense of humor. And I said he spoke very quickly. I may be being a little unfair there. He had a great sense of humor and a wonderful knowledge. And I'm not a rugby man, but he was also a rugby commentator. And those who are in the game said that he was equally the best rugby commentator New Zealand's ever had. So those would be my four: Cozier, Galloway, Charlie Fortune, and I'm settling for Jim Maxwell. Now, does that answer all of your questions?
That's great, Henry. Thanks very, very much indeed.
Lovely, lovely. Are you both happy?
I think they are. Thank you very much, Henry. And our next question was supposed to be coming from Guy Wilson. Guy, if you're there, we can't find you, so you need to identify yourself somehow by telling us what your Zoom name is on chat. We'll go to Peter Probyn now, who's got a slightly different sort of question for you. Peter, you're on mic.
Hello, good evening, Buzz. And
hello, my dear old thing. Are you well?
Thank you. We are. Thank you very much. And
good.
Thank you again for doing this.
Don't be silly. Great fun.
This by saying how much we enjoyed your show when you came to Bristol to the Redgrave Clifton College Theatre to do.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much for saying
brilliant that. Evening, lovely evening, and show what a creep I am. I actually bought the book as well.
Oh, my dear old thing. Good, good, good. I remember you as being someone I thought had too much money.
I doubt that. I'm interested to change the cricket subject for a second. Your other passion is wine.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to ask you, there's a Domaine Tulmar. Would you recommend that to MCC members, or would you suggest or Bassett wines of Telmo Rodriguez pursuit of Spain's indigenous grapes, which
I'm a great supporter of Spain. I think they have some wonderful wines. I didn't hear the first one you put to me.
The Domaine Tulmar.
It's jolly drinkable. I'm not the great expert. I know I'm a great drinker. I'm not the expert that John Arlott was. I promise you. I know what I like, but the really good Spanish wines I love, and it's something I've come to quite late in life since I started to. I bought a house in Menorca, and I spent quite a lot of time there, and I very much got into the way of Spanish wines, and I do enjoy them hugely. And I think it would be lovely if we had Spanish wines that we could sup while watching cricket at Lord's.
So you would recommend that maybe the those that choose the wines might add those to your wine list?
Well, yes, I would. I mean, I'm not trying by going for I go for the Spanish one particularly, and I'm not by trying to knock anyone away or be rude about any other wines, because honestly, I'm not that great an expert, and but I do very much enjoy the good Spanish wines. I think they're terrific, and also I think some of the really very cheap Spanish wines are enormously drinkable. I mean, sort of $5.95 for reds. I think some of them are very good indeed. One from Navarre in particular.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thanks,
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Henry. So
do I get a W after my name after
that? You do. Our next question is from Malcolm Alexander. Malcolm, you're on mic now.
Thank you. Good evening, Henry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and I can see you too.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Sure.
You've obviously watched a lot of cricket, and as we heard earlier, played cricket at a very decent level. But you must have both watched and commentated on both Fred Truman and Sir Geoffrey Boycott, two eminent Yorkshiremen.
Indeed.
Would you be able to give us a couple of highlights of what you remember from their playing careers, and then perhaps of working closely with them in the commentary box, which must have also been quite interesting?
Yes, indeed. I'm just thinking for Fred. I mean, Fred was wonderful. What I really loved about Fred, it was we live in an age of cricketers today who play for England, never play for their counties. Fred said firmly at the end of his career, his proudest ever moment was leading Yorkshire to victory against the Australians. And that is wonderful for me, and that's Fred, and that is cricket. County cricket used to be so important; it's now been devalued. But then that's another subject. Fred in 1963, bowling against the West Indies, wonderful, wasn't it? And those way swingers. He was such a good bowler, the first man ever to take 300 Test wickets, and really, what a performance that was. When you think that because of supposed misbehavior in the 1950s, when he was a young tourist in West Indies on his first tour, he then missed out 3 or 4 series. And in his career, if Fred had played all the Test matches he really should have played, he'd have been past 400 wickets. I have absolutely no doubt at all. And I always think that when you go for the great fast bowler, or your greatest fast bowler, Fred's got to come into the reckoning. And also a man, I loved working with Fred. He always called me H, which no one else did, and he was super. He had a great sense of humour, and he was wonderful at going back and to his playing days and remembering a certain match. And one story of Fred, I remember early in my career, it may even have been my first ever Test match. No, I think it was later. India at Old Trafford in the 1970s. And Colonel H.R. Adhikari was the manager. He was also one of the batsmen in the first 4 of the order when India batted against Fred Truman, the young Truman, in 1952. And I think he may have been, I'm not sure, but he was playing in that match, one of the 4 wickets that fell for no runs at Headingley, Fred taking 3 and Alec Bedser 1. And Brian Johnston, on this day, it was a wet day, brought him into the commentary box. And we were off the air for some reason. And Brian said to Fred, he said, Fred, you remember Colonel Adhikari, don't you? And Fred looked around and said, aye, Colonel. He said, glad to see you got some of colour back, because Colonel Adhikari played him from square leg most of the time. And it was a very funny moment. Geoffrey Boycott, I think I've got a great difference already between the two. Geoffrey didn't really have the sense of humour that Fred had. I mean, Geoffrey didn't sort of make you laugh or really laugh himself in the way that Fred did. Geoffrey led us a sharp cutting edge. His comments were good. He understood cricket brilliantly. He may have overstepped the mark to the extent he tended to think he was the only person who had ever understood cricket. It never really occurred to him that anyone else might have understood it a bit too, but there we are. That's the nature of him and the nature of his batting too. And goodness me, sometimes recently we'd have given our right arm, wouldn't we, to have had a batsman who sold his wicket as dearly as Geoffrey. going in first for England. He wasn't easy. Jeffrey's view of a team game was perhaps a little different to one or two others. But I mean, it's the way it is, isn't it? And probably because of his attitude, it made him the really good, obdurate player that he was. I mean, I don't think you can have batting without character, or character without the batting that complements it, if you see what I mean. In the box, well, I think I've told you a bit about both of them in the box. Jeffrey on the field, I remember watching the second game I think he ever played for Yorkshire at Northampton in I think it was 63, and he was fielding on the boundary, and a Colt then, he hadn't got his first 11 colours. And I remember someone saying, do you think that we'll ever hear about that lad again? Well, my goodness me, we did, didn't we? He was amazingly determined in his career, and he was in his batting too. There were no flourishes to Jeffrey, really, in terms of batting or in terms of commentating. It was, he wanted to be in the middle. He didn't want to get out. And I think that went for the microphone as well as it did for the green bat. I hope I've not been unfair at all. I haven't wanted to be. No. He was great. He was great value in the commentary box. Not a very easy person to work with, I have to say.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being so candid. We thought we might hear worse, even, but thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Malcolm. That's great, and thanks again, Henry. Our next question comes from Chris Biddle. Chris, you're on mic now.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening.
Hello.
Henry, I was at Northlands, Southampton in 1965 for the Hampshire versus Norfolk game, which I think went over 2 days. And
you remember that crack cutting Butch White?
I was probably in the bar at the time.
Yeah, oh dear.
Yeah, but I seem to remember that Bill Edridge was playing, but he must have been quite an age.
Bill Edridge captained Norfolk until he was getting on in his 60s, I think. He came back and he finished Middlesex in about 1958, I think it was. Maybe 9, I can't remember. And he played for about another 10 years. He was wonderful. Bill knew more about cricket than any man I've ever known, and he taught me so much. I used to keep wicket, and he used to field the first slip. We never stopped talking, and he was wonderful. He had a great sense of humour, and he a terrific chap. I absolutely worshipped at the shrine. And he bowled in those days. Do you remember when he played for England after the war? He ran in and bowled. I mean, he ran in quicker than the ball he bowled, if it's possible. But in those days, when I knew him and played with him, he bowled his off breaks. He bowled them pretty well too. And he also made a lot of runs, all on the leg side. Then Bill got 90% of his runs on the leg side, didn't he, really? Or 85%.
Mm. And my question really is...
Oh, sorry, waffling on. I shouldn't. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No. Given that the counties may have to trim their playing staffs this year because of what's going on, and this is really connected with minor counties and the club game, do you think the club game could play a greater supporting role to the professional game, much in the way that grade cricket provides a stepping stone in Australia to state and international cricket?
Well, my immediate answer is no. Grade cricket, whatever you like to call it out in Australia, you've got the good players. I mean, that is a genuine sort of state second 11 cricket, isn't it? It's I think a much higher standard probably than club cricket is here. I think, I don't know, I haven't watched club cricket for a long time. There's so much difficulty in terms of the financial side of it all. I don't quite know how they're going to get. I mean, look at the difficulty when a minor county gets promoted to a first-class county. Durham was the last one that did, and it was a very uneasy sort of jump up for quite some time. And it was only because they got the older players like Ian Botham and I can't remember who they all were, but they all came, didn't they? And Foxy Fowler was another, one of my Test match special colleagues, great man, Foxy. And they came and helped Durham along. But I think it's always very reassuring to have a solid club game at a club level. But the trouble is, in recent years, we've seen county cricket and Test cricket getting further and further apart. And I think we've also seen club cricket and county cricket getting a little further apart too. And I mean, I think it's a lovely idea what you say. I'm not just quite certain how you, in terms of practicality, you could make it happen. How do you, I mean, you thought this through more than I have, because you just sprung it on me. I mean, would you like to see it happening?
Well, I'm just thinking that it could well be a feeder, because if the counties are going to have to trim their staff, then and the clubs quite often engage Australian young professionals who we train over here and get them used to English conditions so that they can knock 7 bells of hell out of us when we go over there, or they come here. There will be a surfeit of county pros, I think, who are no longer on staffs, and so they could bolster the club game. I'm not really suggesting that we have more minor counties or more counties, but I'm looking at it more as a feeder system.
How would, if you've got, okay, I take that point. You've got the pros coming down and they're not employed on a full-time basis, but if they're going to play consistent kind of cricket and keep themselves in trim so that they could go back, they've got to play fairly consistent cricket. They also aren't employed by the counties. They've got to feed themselves and their families. They've got to earn money. And that's the stumbling block, it seems to me. The clubs, the ordinary clubs are not going to be able to afford to pay them, I would have thought. And that's where I don't see quite how this actually comes to gel.
No, but I do think that maybe as a result of what's happening at the moment, there may have to be a blank sheet of paper for professional cricket in this country.
Well, I mean, this could well be. You feel that the county championship as such has really done its dash, do you?
Oh, I hope not. I really hope not.
I hope
one of the best.
I mean, I'm not. I personally am desperately pro counties, and I'm desperately anti until proved otherwise about franchises, city franchises, and all that stuff for the 100. But then that's on to something else, because I'm not certain where loyalties come in on that basis. But that's a much wider can of worms, a deeper one too, isn't it?
No, and thank you very much for that, Henry. And just to say, one of the best days cricket I've had in a long, long time was last year at New Close in the Isle of Wight, when Hampshire played Nottinghamshire. It was like going back to the 50s.
Well, it's always a bit like that going to the Isle of Wight anyway, isn't it? It's a lovely ground there, isn't it, that they've got? And I think it's terrific, and long may it continue. And I hope very much that Hampshire play a little bit more there, because I think there is a lot of support there that deserves all the support that it can get.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks again, Henry. Well, we've got two questions on a similar subject now. So if I could ask Louisa Coxedge to come in, and then followed by Derek Wheeler, and then you can answer them both. Louisa, your mic.
Hi, Henry.
Hello. I saw you a moment ago. You almost put me off answering my last question. You look so lovely.
I loved you on the Real Marigold Hotel. And
oh, I know.
And I just wanted to ask, well, how did you find the experience? And what was it like visiting the cricket ground in Madras, where you made your final overseas broadcast?
And Derek,
okay,
would you like to
answer that, or shall I listen to the next one first?
Derek's got a very similar question. So, Derek, do you want to ask your question? You can answer them both.
Yeah, Henry, to us cricket fans, you're a revered commentator. Now that you've become a media star on reality TV, do you now have a new fan base? And secondly, did Britt Ekland try to seduce you?
We'll get that one out of the way, but she was certainly not given a chance, actually. You know, I'm a batsman who knows where my off stump is. No, that deals with that one. It was great fun, actually. I was fascinated. I'd never been involved in a major production of that sort before. We had a very disparate crew, but that was the whole fun of it. None of us knew each other, and we all got to know each other. And there were some wonderful people there, and we all got on remarkably well, considering how different our backgrounds and everything else were. I mean, Sandra Rhodes was absolutely terrific, and so too was Paul Elliott, great fun, and Susie Blake was a terrific lady, the actress. And also Barbara was fun, who sang like mad, Barbara Dixon. And no, the whole thing was wonderful. I'd never been to Pondicherry before, which of course is amazingly French still. I mean, do you know people living there still speak French in the French Quarter? And I mean, they play things like pétanque and boule. They play, the police rather wear gendarmes hats. They look like gendarmes. And the architecture in the French Quarter by the sea is, you could be in France. It's remarkable. And then you go beyond that, and it's India, but it's fascinating. We loved it, and we were looked after beautifully. And then we had 2 nights in Chennai, in Madras that was, and I went to answer your question to the Chapak Stadium and reenacted that business in my last commentary. And my eyes let me down. I made a complete absolute nonsense of giving Liam Dawson out a short extra cover. It still makes me, I still feel embarrassed when I talk about it. And he's actually bold. And Darrow's Sonny Gavaskar at the dreadful moment, and I looked at him and said, "What about that, Sonny?" And he said, slowly and sorrowfully, he said, "No, Henry, he was bold." Oh dear, bang. And it was that really which steered me towards retirement, because if your eyes let you down, you mustn't go on. But it was wonderful going back. I love India. And then we went up to Rishikesh, made famous by the Beatles, of course, in the early 60s, when they went there, their guru. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The only problem with the heights, we lived on the other side of Rishikesh. Every time we went up or down, the sheer drop just the other side of the road, and there was anything within about a yard of it, and there were no barriers or anything. Oh, and one died 1,000 deaths on each journey. But apart from that, it was simply wonderful. And would I go again? Yes, I would this afternoon.
Excellent.
That's lovely to hear.
Thank you.
Lovely to hear you, and you're looking wonderful too.
Oh, thank you.
I think he was talking about you, Derek, but...
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
My Derek, you need glasses too.
I probably do. They both look lovely, and so do you, Henry. The next question comes from from Max Sawyer, who is once again disguised as his wife Audrey, I think. So Max, you're on mic.
Thank you. Good evening, Henry.
You don't look very disguised now.
Quite.
Unless you're married yourself.
Henry, you've been watching cricket for a year or two.
Yeah.
Who is the best batsman, the best bowler, the best wicket keeper, and the best captain you've seen, and why?
Oh well, I mean, who is the best batsman? I actually saw Don Bradman, but I was a 9 at the time, so I can't really. I mean, one can't, but obviously look at his record. He has to be the best, doesn't he? Ever. Viv Richards. I mean, the ones I saw and commentated about, you can't get really much better than that, can you? Barry Richards. I thought probably of all the cricketers I ever saw, all the batsmen I ever saw, Barry Richards made batting look easier than anyone else. But because of South Africa's isolation, he played only in 4 test matches, and I saw all 4 of them actually, against Australia in 69-70. And I saw him also, one thing which I never forget, was when he and Graham Pollock made those, that 120, was it that sort of thing? No, it was 109, I think, in the hour after lunch at Kingsmead, Durban. And it was one of only 2 or 3 occasions in my life when I've seen 2 great batsmen going at their best together at the same time. It was an amazing partnership. Now, I can't remember. What else? I can't remember. I've lost sight of your question. Give it to me again.
The best bowler, the best bowler, that's best right. Wicket keeper, best captain.
The best bowler. If I have to answer that with one name, it is Shane Warne. I think what Shane Warne did to the art of leg spin bowling, leg spin bowling is very dangerous by its nature, the finger spin. And yet, Warne's figures were the figures of a finger spinner. Warne was the first leg spinner to deal consistently and made nervous. He was an amazing bowler. The best fast bowler I've ever seen, well, I have put Fred high on my list, Fred Truman, Dennis Lilly, great bowler. I thought Dennis Lilly was Wazir McCram. Yes, absolutely. And I mean, the others too. Richard Hadley has to be up there. He was an amazing bowler. I think Richard Hadley has to be in the top bracket. Malcolm Marshall, I mean, West Indies. People always go for Michael Holding. I always thought the the most dangerous bowler at that time was Andy Roberts. So I think he had the genius for working out a batsman's weakness and indeed his strengths, not bowling at one and bowling at the other. But there were so many, weren't there? I mean, goodness me. But no, I think undoubtedly Shane Warne, for me, as the greatest bowler of all. The greatest all-rounder of all is the easiest question in the book, Gary Sobers. There's no other competitor. Your Bothams, anyone else, Capel Devs, wonderful, but they weren't Gary Sobers. Gary, just for the record, bowled left arm over the wicket quick. He bowled unorthodox left arm spin, orthodox left arm spin. He made, 7,000 runs going number 6, which is not an easy place to get runs. You run out of partners, don't you? You know, and the innings has got on so far, you don't have a chance really to play an innings if you've got the sort of batsman ahead of you that he had. And also, of course, he caught swallows round the bat, didn't he? Mm. So we leave Gary out. And the best wicketkeeper I've ever seen, the best wicketkeeper there's ever been, in my view, Alan Knott. Alan Knott, one of the great joys I've had in my years watching cricket, in the days when wickets, pitches were uncovered, I would love, we'll never see them again. I only wish we could. But when Derek Underwood, Deadly as they called him, was bowling for Kent, on a drying pitch, the ball would do everything except talk. It would kick, it would spit, it would do everything. Notty standing close to the wicket, remembering that Derek Underwood bowled quicker than medium pace. And Notty was amazing, absolutely amazing. And the best fielder of all, I don't think you asked me the best fielder, but I'm going to give it to you, Colin Bland. Colin Bland of South Africa. And I was at Lord's in 1965 on that day when he, from square on, he ran out first Jim Parks and then Ken Barrington, hitting the one stump he could see from some distance too. He ran out Jim Parks from the mid-wicket boundary. I think he ran one of them out from the mid-wicket boundary anyway. So I think that just about does it all.
One more, Henry. Best captain.
Oh, best captain. Sorry, yes. I think I have a great respect for Douglas Jardine. Everyone, the bodyline, the Australians have never gone over bodyline, have they? I went till they were caught cheating. Recently, Warner and co, remember in South Africa, has given us something to crow at them about. I think Jardine must have been a good captain, but then Mike Brearley. I mean, we always come back to Mike Brearley. I think Michael Vaughan was a very good captain and an underrated captain. If you look at the match by match of that 2005 series in England, Michael Vaughan's captaincy played a huge part in England winning that series. And we had 4 really, really tight games. And we were bowled out with the first one, weren't we, by McGrath at Lord's. And then they were all very tight, and to come through a tight series from a one-down situation as Vaughan did, and to win back the Ashes for the first time for almost 20 years, there was a lot hanging on it. And Vaughan I put very high in the order of captains. I suppose one probably goes for Mike Brearley after what happened in 1981. But if he trod on a ball like McGrath that day and went lame, Michael Vaughan would be a jolly good substitute.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Very interesting question. Very interesting question. Thanks indeed, Max. So change of direction here. Next question from Noel Kearns. Noel.
Thank you, James. Henry,
hello.
Hello, Henry. Can you see me?
I can, indeed, all of you.
Good evening.
I've never felt better all day.
I'm glad to hear it. We met 1 or 2 times. You did some sports aid lunches with my arranged through my colleague Fenimore, Roger Fenimore.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, yes.
Up in the northern home counties, and they were good fun. This is before you developed the really good act that you now do on the road. But we enjoyed you immensely.
Well, aren't you?
Right. Before I ask my question, you mentioned a little while ago about people getting in the way, and you hope you didn't get in the way. This is you getting in the way of me in 2017 when we were watching the West Indies, your last day.
My last day, oh dear.
Alan Road front stand. Alan Road front stand.
I went away, I wouldn't ever talk to a chap again who did that to me, who are talking to me.
Well, you were clapped all the way round, so good luck to you. Anyway, back to your question. I like the colour.
though, but my goodness me, I'd never forget that.
No, you got a really good hand, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, it was marvelous.
I mean, I'm not sure what marks you'd get for the fashion colours, but you know, that's another matter.
Well, you're colourblind anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Right, to my question, Henry. Henry, did you ever fly on Concorde?
No.
Well, let me finish. I'm fortunate to say I did, both ways across the Atlantic, and a great experience it was. The reason I'm coming to that is that your references to the daily flights during Lord's TMS days are one of my most memorable reminiscences from pre-Sky days.
Well, didn't I talk
would you
about...
care to expand on that?
More from the Oval, I think, didn't I? I remember the day, I remember right at the end, sitting in my garden in Chelsea and watching all 5 come in one after the other. And they all more or less came over where we were. And I remember the Daily Concorde, or maybe 2 Daily Concordes came in over the Oval, didn't they?
The Oval, I thought it was the Oval.
I'd love to have flown in Concorde, but I never, none of my people who employed me were prepared to dig into their pockets so substantially, I think. And anyway, they went, I don't know, they went mostly to America, didn't they? And I went in the other direction, you see. So it didn't work, sadly.
So, given other than the Concorde and the Pigeons, what are your? Am I cut off?
No.
Okay.
Or anything exciting.
Given the Concorde and the Pigeons, which were forever at war, are there any other particular reminiscences of views other than cricket that you'd like to recount to us?
Any other views other than cricket?
Yeah.
Do you mean views from cricket grounds?
From the commentary box that were nothing to do with what was going on the pitch. Are there any particular things that come to your mind?
I remember David Lloyd telling everyone to get me. There was in the Kellogg building at Old Trafford across the ground. There was someone up there waving at me, an old lady with a sign, and I said, "Oh, of course I could see it." And it was absolute nonsense. But the Old Trafford was lovely. The Warwick Road station and the Chester Flyer, which was the two carriages that used to shoot through the Stretford station, the Warwick Road station, which is now the Old Trafford station, isn't it? The buses, of course, I love the buses. I mean, the Kirkstall Lane, the buses there at Headingley. There were always some at Trent Bridge going down the Loughborough Road, the Harleford Road in London, the Wellington Road, and occasionally the St John's Wood Road at Lord's. I loved the buses. And in Durham, there were buses always going up to Lumley Castle. I'm never quite certain why, but there were buses doing that. And also, but I think they were private buses bringing people to cricket. And there were other buses too at Riverside. Why did buses? I don't know. Brian Johnston always said, I was run over by a bus when I was 17 and knocked unconscious for 4 weeks or something silly. And Brian always used to say that because I'd been run over by a bus, I had an acute attack of busitis, which may or may not have been true, but there we were. It seemed to me, I can remember at Lord's starting the buses, and all these red buses we could see from where we were sitting, and they were a part of our day. And I always just wanted to mention them, and I think they were a part. And I'm a great believer as a commentator, you've got to paint the picture. And the picture's just not just what happens in the middle. It's the whole, it's the outside of the picture, it's the mount, and it's the frame for a composite picture. I remember the best bus story at Lord's, actually, was when I can't remember the test match. And I said a couple of buses stopped in the waiting room. I said, good heavens, the third bus has stopped, and a fourth. I said, it's a convocation of buses. And another one's come along. Peter Baxter was heard to say in the background, our producer, for God's sake, someone tell Blowers it's a bus stop.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for that, Henry.
Thanks, Noel.
Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Noel. Well, our next question, we're back to commentators and summarisers now from Tom Burridge. Tom.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Henry, for doing this. Much appreciated. So you rather sort of span generations with your commentary career, and as somebody who's, I suppose, comparatively new to TMS, having listened probably for the last 10 years or so, I just wondered how you'd compare the current crop of commentators to the teams of the past. So how does sort of Simon Mann and Ebony Rainford Brent, for example, compare with the Johners and CMJs of years past? And do you feel like TMS is in safe hands moving forward?
The answer to the last part of your question, yes, I think it's in very safe hands. But I think what you've got to remember is that time is changing. We're all involved in a constant evolutionary process. Brian Johnston, John Arlott didn't have very much one-day cricket to commentate about. It was the more gentle era of Test cricket. Commentary was different. I mean, the box, the product of our box, has changed in step with the cricket we're commentating about. We had the Gillette Cup first, a small dosage, short doses of one-day cricket. Then we got the John Player League, didn't we? The 40-over competition on Sundays. Then the Benson and Hedges Cup, the one-day cup, which was partly league until we got to the quarters and the semis, and the final, of course. And then now we've got all the T20s and everything, and T20 is frenetic. Of course it's frenetic, and the commentary box has got to be frenetic. I'm sure Arlott would have, dear John, he would have done T20 very well being John Arlott, but he'd have been very surprised about it. It would have, it's a lovely thought actually as to how he might have got on with it. He was a wonderful man with a great, great sense of humor. Brian, I think, would have done it perfectly well because he had that sort of way of doing it, and you know he could get on with most things. And one of the very good commentators in my early time, who did very few Test matches, was Alan Gibson. I wonder how I don't think Alan, the nature of one-day cricket would never really have suited him. And I think Alan, being Alan, would have made that very plain on the air. So I'm not certain he would have fitted into the box today as well as he did then. I think today's commentators, I think Aggers is absolutely brilliant. I think he comes across as nice a man as he genuinely is. I think Simon Mann, who I always call Grumps, makes it very annoying. His nickname when he first joined the BBC was Grumpy. He won't be pleased to hear me talk about this. I think he is a very, very, very good commentator. He's so reliable. And what he says, you know, is absolutely right. I think his trouble is that he hasn't got a demonstrative voice, if you like it, or a particularly demonstrative manner. And I'm not certain that he won't go through his life doing a very, very, very good job every time it's asked of him without it ever really being fully appreciated. I think he's very good. I think Dan Norcross has come along well. I mean, he started, didn't he, with Test Match Sofa, which required a very different disciplines, but I think he's come along well. I think Charlie Dagnall does it well, and the others and the ladies. Ebony does it brilliant. Aisha Guha is very good, very good. And Alison, who was really the pioneer lady, also does it very well. So I think TMS is in a very strong position. The listenership figures, I believe, go up, and I'm sure they'll continue to do so. And you know, I think it's in really good hands, and as a very good producer in Adam Manford. So I'm very bullish about it.
Thanks, Tom. Next question then from Jim Knox. Jim, you're on the mic.
Good evening, Henry.
Hello.
You mentioned Don Bradman at the age of 9. I was actually at the same match at the age of 8 when he scored 89 at Lord's. I believe it was also your first visit to Lord's. It was mine.
I saw him. It was yours too.
It was mine. Yes, yes.
I can remember seeing him caught by Bill Edridge up here at first slip at the nursery end, and being rather disappointed he hadn't got 100. But everyone sitting around me was very delighted. It was a wonderful, wonderful moment that for me. Yeah. This little man is very. Do you remember the old? It was a very old and enormously baggy cap. And when we were sitting on the grass in front of Q stand, and when he came into bat, everyone sort of stood up, and you couldn't see him until he appeared because the members in the pavilion were all standing up. And I mean, they didn't have to get past Fingers' tummy. He wasn't there then, but I mean, they were all standing up, and you simply couldn't see. And then suddenly, this little man came out onto the grass with a very, very determined stride, didn't he?
But he walked very slowly to get used to the light, I gather.
So yes, good to get you well indeed. I mean, he knew all the answers, didn't he? And yeah. I mean, he was a cunning old whatnot. But yeah. My goodness, what a player!
Sorry, my question really was, of all the opening batsmen who recently made hundreds, like Lyth, Robson and Jennings never seemed to go on to make any more hundreds or big scores. Do you have a sort of thought as to why that would have been? Did they just belong to full sense of church, or did the opponents work him out?
I haven't watched county cricket for long years, since about 1999 when I had a heart bypass and I had to stop watching that. My immediate reaction to that is always the influence of one-day cricket. And players have got to be very, very good to be able to come from one to the other. I said earlier, Tony Cozier would walk from a television commentary to a radio commentary seamlessly. And there are certain batsmen who can do it in terms of coming from the one-day game, from T20 even to Test cricket, and do it. But basically, Test cricket, why Test cricket is so much more digestible these days, it ends in 3 or 4 days, most matches, is because of the influence of the one-day game. Batsmen can't bat time anymore. The last Englishman who could bat time was Alistair Cook, who could go in and occupy, he could dig himself in for 2 days. There's no one left who can do that. And it's those big innings that win Test matches as far as batsmen are concerned. But that is why the scores of 350, okay, they're fine, but you never get the really big scores today. The 600s and 700s, or very seldom, that you used to get quite a lot in the old days. And this is because batsmen, I think, don't discipline themselves to the needs of Test cricket. I mean, the needs of a 5-day game are so different from the needs of a 40-over match, 20 overs. And so, I mean, my answer would be that the Robsons and the Jennings and the others who got their hundreds simply haven't really worked out what's required from Test cricket, or have allowed themselves, if you like it, to be corrupted by the scoreboard needs of one-day cricket.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does that make sense?
Very much so, yeah.
Good, good.
Thank you, Jim. Right, next question then from, we're back to commentating again, to Philip Ross. Philip.
Hello, Henry.
Hello.
My question to you is, what attracted you to cricket commentating, and how has it changed since you first started?
What attracted me to it? I don't think, the first I thought about, I never thought I was going to be a cricket commentator. I always loved listening to it. Do you remember John Thickness, who wrote the Evening Standard, died a few years ago? John Thickness said to me one day in 1968, have you ever thought about commentating? That was the first moment I ever had. And I said, no, what do I do? And he said, you write to the chap in charge of outside broadcasts at the BBC and ask for a trial commentary. And I did. Robert Hudson was in charge. I did a trial commentary, which worked, I think. And so really, I mean, they almost came to me rather than me coming to them. I then had they said that was fine, the trial commentary, and they were going to add my name to the cricket commentators, but they didn't use me for 3 years, and I wondered what had happened. I then went out to the West Indies in 71-2, writing for newspapers, the New Zealand's first ever tour of the Caribbean, and found there were 2 radio networks in the West Indies, and Alan Richards, the New Zealand commentator, worked for one. The other one, Rediffusion, wanted a foreign voice. And Jack came up and said, have you ever commentated? And sensing an opportunity, I said, I've seldom done anything else. Why? And the long and short was I got the job, and I did a whole series out there, making all the worst mistakes. So when I came back and actually did my first match for the BBC, which was on 2, I should think, it was at Chelmsford, the Whit weekend in 1972. I think by then I, as it were, cut my teeth and got rid of most of my really bad faults in front of an audience that was far less exacting than a BBC audience. So, I mean, that was how it all began. How's it changed? Well, I think I've rather answered that. The nature of the game of cricket has changed it. We're all involved in an evolutionary process. And I think the nature of one-day cricket, first of all, it was 60 overs, then 50 overs, then we had the 40-over John Player League, and then 2020. The nature of the beast has caused the nature of our beast in the commentary box to change, to become quicker, to become more in keeping with the product.
Thank you, Henry.
I mean, I think that really is just about sums it up as far as I mean, everything changes, doesn't it? When we look back at our lives, like, see, you're not as old as me, but you've been around a bit. You've got a certain bottle age in your vest, and you've seen life change, and it does change, doesn't it? There's an evolutionary process. We do things now in a way we would never have done it before. We didn't do it overnight and change like that. It was a process of time. It was a gradual process.
Thank you. Great answer.
Great.
Thank you very much. Alan Lumsden next, who's going to ask a question that I think we'd all like to ask. And yes, Alan, are you there?
I am indeed, yes. Can you hear me?
My dear thing, how are you?
Hi.
I'm very well, Henry.
Very good. He and I were in the same house at school. And goodness, he's survived the years much better than me.
I am actually 10 days older than you, I'm appalled to say. Yeah.
10 days, October the 5th.
September the 13th. September the 23rd.
Yeah.
But it's a change to see you here because I actually stare at you and me as part of the famous dry bob tug of war of 1957.
Yeah, I've got your photo
daily in my downstairs loo and have done for 40 years.
Oh, I've got mine upstairs loo in Minorca. How lovely. It'll give me a chance to think of you.
My question was to give you something to work at. 5-day tests remain the sort of gold standard, but we don't seem to attract crowds to them anywhere except in England. You've watched cricket for a long time all over the world. Why? And have you any ideas as to improving it?
It's a terribly good question, that, isn't it? No, the answer is I don't have any ideas how we can improve it. I think it'll keep going because of the television aspect of it. 5 days test cricket is cheaper television than one-day cricket, because you have 5 one-day matches, you've got to move everything, the circus has to go round, everything has to be reset up. So the broadcasters like it, which is why, I mean, in India, you actually get more people to test cricket now in India than you did, but you're playing largely to, well, relatively empty stadiums. I suppose, I mean, people's attention span today is less, isn't it, than it used to be. You're talking about per capita income. I mean, in the West Indies, the per capita income is very low. You've got smallish grounds. You're never going to get big crowds there again, I don't think, because the opportunities have become so much greater for people to enjoy themselves. I really don't know. I mean, I personally think that Test cricket, and goodness sake, we hope that it will never disappear. That noise is sorry, it's a thing. You turn it on. And my lovely wife has turned something on in the corner, and I really don't know. I think Test cricket we've got to accept is a prior charge on the profits of one-day cricket. And I think it's sad that it's come to this. It's sort of, in a way, the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? But I honestly don't know how we're going to. I mean, in Australia, when England go there, you get good crowds. You get pretty good crowds when South Africa go there, when the South African side's anything like it. And you get crowds when India go there, but only for the sort of Melbourne and Sydney. You don't really get them. You do, I suppose, the Australia Day weekend in Adelaide, you get people coming along. But I really don't know. I mean, you asked the question, can you think of a reason or a solution?
No, I can't. I wish there was a solution. I think 5-day tests can still produce far more exciting cricket, not always, but frequently than one day.
Well, I mean, but
like you, I despair, frankly, of the idea of the 100. I think they're just chasing nonsense instead of going for the important things of the game. But that's too big a subject to get into.
I agree with you. I agree with you entirely.
Thank you very much.
I agree with all of that. And I mean, I think that 5-day cricket, when it's at its best, there's nothing in sport that approaches it.
Absolutely.
I mean, and just occasionally we get one of those really good test matches that go all the way through to the last hour of the game, and one side wins by a small amount, and it's wonderful.
Yes.
But I personally feel it's worth suffering all the rest just for that.
Fair enough. Good answer. Thank you.
And what an excellent question. And I think probably you speak for most of us here today. I think we all feel exactly the same about Test match cricket, and probably about the 100 as well. But as you say, that's for another day. Stephen Warshaw next. Stephen, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, James. Good evening, Henry.
Hello, my dear old thing.
Greetings from Norfolk, where I've been on the golf course with one of your old teammates from Norfolk, I imagine.
Peter Parfitt.
Well done.
Yeah, well, I thought Brancaster you've been. Yeah, you had that look in your eye. I can see it. How is Parf? Will you give him my love when you next see him?
I certainly will. He's there all the time, and he's on good form actually. I mean, he's still on the practice ground, practicing away.
Is he doesn't run quite so many quick singles these days, I wouldn't think.
No, he goes round in a buggy now. Anyway, the question is, as you look back over your years in the box, of these celebrity guests who've been in the TMS box, who have you enjoyed the most and who's been the most memorable for you? And second part of the question, if you were still in there and you were in charge of making the choice, who would you still like to have in the box today?
Do you mean as commentators or as guests?
As guests.
Well, you're talking about, I mean, we're talking two things here. One, people who just pop in and say a few words and we enjoy having. And the others are the visitors who come in on Saturdays on the View from the Boundary.
Yeah.
The View from the Boundary was started by Johners, and Johners did all Views from the Boundary. He then died, and Aggers had obviously taken over. But for a time, it was thrown to all of us. I mean, I once interviewed Boris Johnson, can you believe it, at Old Trafford. Oz Clarke, Bill Deeds, the Beast of Bolsover, Dennis Skinner.
Oh my God.
And a great fun we had. He's become a good friend. They were great characters. And there was one, I cannot remember his name, pianist, the English pianist who went out to America, where he spent most of his life, who actually appeared twice on View from the Boundary, once on purpose, so to speak, and once because someone didn't turn up and he was watching on the top deck of the pavilion. I cannot think of his name. Oh, how ridiculous! He lived in Connecticut, and then had a house in the Cotswolds. And Ellie was his wife. George Shearing was his name. George, do you remember George Shearing, the pianist? He was a wonderful character, and I would have him absolutely straight up. Bill Deeds was another who was absolutely wonderful. I'd have to have Dennis Skinner because he would equal it out, the balance. He'd be awfully good. And I think we'd need, wouldn't we, with Arles in the box, everyone else, we'd need a wine expert. And so whether it would be Oz Clarke, he would fill that role very well indeed. I'm not certain whether, I can't remember his name either, who ran the wine department at Christie's for years and years, who died not very long ago. I think he was a victim of Johnnes's once, and maybe he would have done it. But we've had some very good, I know, I tell you who I'll go for. I won't go for a wine expert, I'll go for Michael Benteen.
Oh.
One of the goons. He came and he was wonderful. So that'd be rather good, wouldn't it? Michael Benteen, George Shearing, Bill Deeds, and who was the other one? I've gone blank on myself.
Not Boris, I hope.
No. Skinner. Oh, the Beast of Bolsover. Sorry, that was, yes, absolutely. But I think those were the four that I've enjoyed as much as any. Does that roughly answer your question?
Very good indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Henry, it's absolutely amazing. We've been going for an hour and it's absolutely raced past. Are you all right for just one more question? Because
yes, of course, I'll do two more.
Okay, we couldn't find Guy Wilson. He was due to ask a question. He may be with us, but if he is, he's in disguise. So my co-host today.
Sky, well,
yeah,
if he's in the sky, They've got 11. We don't want that.
Well, just you're in disguise. You're iPad 28.
Yeah, playing with words. When you
Henry or Blowers or.
Okay, we seem to have lost our host. James is just frozen. So what was about to happen was that I was going to ask these two questions here on Guy Wilson's behalf.
Yeah, do that.
Is, with the benefit of hindsight of some 43 years since the Packer affair, as encapsulated in the title of your first book, would you...
No, not my first book, my second book.
I can't take responsibility for that. If you ever find Guy, we'll blame him.
Or cricket in 3 moods.
Right. Would you have been less condemnatory in the book of Packer of the various county cricket boards and of the players themselves, with the benefit of hindsight?
Yes, I would, because I think the cricketers were being really treated like serfs by a lot of the authorities, the committees who ran the game. Yes, I think I blame the Australian board at the time badly, and Don Bradman, who was really was the Australian cricket board in everything but name. Had they tried to do it, as it were, when I say a deal with Packer, had they said to him, look, you've got lots of money you want to spend on cricket. We don't entirely agree with you, but look, we're going to give you a place on our cricket board with us. Come and put your ideas around and let's see how we can meet and let's see how we can get it. Packer was offering them 3 times or maybe even more than the amount of money the ABC was offering. They couldn't kick him into touch. It's what they tried to do and engineer this extraordinary battle. Had they said to him, look, okay, we'll put you on the Australian board, I think it could all have been done. Packer would have won not as much as he did, because it would never have been an open conflict in that way. The game would have gone more towards him than the sort of Gubby Allens of this world, the Don Bradmans would have wanted. But no harm, I don't think there'll be any harm in that. And as we've seen, time is a great healer. It's like the sea, isn't it? I mean, recently broken glass after a bit of time in the sea gets smoothed over. And I think it's, you know, coloured clothes, white sight screens, all that was going to come. Someone was going to do it. And it took a man like Packer, who was very obstinate and immensely rich. That's important. He did it, and he was immensely loyal, too, to the people he got to work for him, to come over to him. But I think it was badly handled by the Australians. I think it was an accident that was waiting to happen. I think it was bound to happen, because I think the cricketers were getting a raw deal when the age of society was getting on beyond that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Sorry.
My second question, what are your views on 4-day Test cricket?
I don't want 4-day Test cricket. I think it's going to alter. We've got a lot of tests finished in 3 and 4 days. People go into a test with a 5-day mentality. If you change that and the players go out there with a 4-day mentality, you'll get test matches ending in 2 days. I don't think there's any reason to change Test cricket at all. I would always want it left as 5 days. And I mean, I answer that quite quickly, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no give or take there. It's one or the other. And for me, it's got to remain as 5.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, and well said. So our last question today comes from Morley Packer. Morley, you're on the mic now.
Thank you, James. And thank you, Henry, for giving us an absolutely wonderful evening. My question relates to those who have worked in the box with you. You've mentioned so many of them, but I don't think you've mentioned Jim Swanton. Could you perhaps give us...
No, I didn't. I wasn't, sorry, I'm remiss of me, but I haven't deliberately excluded him. We haven't had a sort of situation where I could fit him in. Jim
absolutely, not a criticism, but a comment, and leading the ultimate...
Jim was a great friend of cricket. He wasn't everyone's cup of tea. He was known by some people as Pomponius Ego, and there was a certain element of that in Swanton. He was a wonderful close-of-play summariser, which I think he will always be remembered for. Do you remember he'd come in and would do his summary at the end of each day, and it was always well worth listening to. He had a genius for encapsulating 6 hours or more into just 3 or 4 minutes. He did it simply brilliantly. He wrote well too. He didn't write half as well as the best cricket writer I think it was Johnny Woodcock, who mercifully is still with us at the age of 93. And when I talked to him day before yesterday, he was threatening to burst into print again. So Times readers may even see another piece by him, which would be lovely. Mind you, I think Mike Atherton is sensational in the Times too. Jim was a great friend of cricket. I knew him quite well. He ran the Arabs, which is his own cricket side, which he founded in 1935, and I was an Arab. And so I did know Jim quite well. I worked for him once in the West Indies in 67-8 Colin Cowdrey's tour, and we had a couple of famous rows together. And I think he always was slightly suspicious of me, and me of him probably in a way, but there was no harm in that. And but he was always good value, and his columns were always extremely readable, weren't they? There was always something in them which was great fun. I always remember any of those columns on Monday morning, there was always a last paragraph of some little curious detail that he'd come his way from club cricket. And someone had taken 9 wickets and 8 balls. I mean, I'm not meaning that literally, but there were little things which were fun. And Jim was good. He was fun. Yes, we miss him. We miss him very much. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention him earlier when I should have done.
Not at all, and thank you very much for it.
Not at all. Thank you all for listening. It's been the greatest fun.
Thank you, Morley. Thank you, Morley, and thank you, Henry. It's been a fantastic evening. I'm so grateful to you for you spending your time with us. Perhaps everyone, you won't be able to hear them, perhaps everyone could give a round of applause to Henry, so at least he can see your appreciation, even if he can't hear you. Just to let everybody know, we're probably going to have Graham Gooch as our guest next week, but we don't have a date yet. So if you're already signed up to the Members Independent Online Pavilion, please come on and we'll have the announcement there. Otherwise, I will be sending out the usual emails to let people know. Thank you all for joining. Thanks again, Henry, and we'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.
Bye, Thing.
Bye.